Hey, thank you for clicking on this video. It's basically a podcast, something I haven't done in a while, but unlike my usual unbearable rants, this one is structured and somewhat to the point because it's essentially a string of 3 unfinished but scripted videos. So while as a whole this thing is a bit random, each segment is kind of its own planned video, but I thought posting 3 videos at the same time would be a bit spammy, plus that way one of them would be very unnecessary as well as super late, another would be utter trash, and only one would be kinda okay-ish. However, even that one okay-ish video I really don't want to make, because I ended up pretty much hating the game I chose to review, therefore I don't really have much to say about it unless I'm asked. Of my own volition, don't really feel like wasting my time on it, you know? Contrary to popular opinion, I don't enjoy sitting here alone and bitching to myself about video play things 4 hours and lose a day or 2 out of my life, kinda, editing said bitching. If for some reason there's a soul out there that wants to know what took me so long, that's the reason. I picked the wrong game. Why not review a different game then? Well, because to be honest, that review, or you might even say this review, was supposed to be my last one. And by the time I realized I don't want to record, edit, and publish it, I've already finished this quite long game as well as the review for it. So I went back and forth on this decision several times already, but my final one is to make the one huge video, quote-unquote, explaining everything. For the first time ever, I am timestamping my video, or segmenting, whatever it's called, and I'll say right away, I think this video is a mess, and it's bad, but if you recently subscribed to this channel, long story short, this is gonna be the last video either for a long while or ever. I might occasionally upload some trashy music here, which I honestly don't recommend sticking around for, so please consider unsubscribing. This channel, as a gaming one, is 100% done. If you want to know more, like why, for example, there should be a timestamp, probably called something like State of the Channel or something like that. Again, this is a fully podcast-style video. Since I'm not streaming anymore, I don't have a ton of video footage to work with, like to choose from, so the visuals are probably completely random and unrelated to anything I'm talking about. Okay, so let me start by boiling your blood a little. I know it is super late for this, but fuck it. 2020 is the year AAA console gaming pretty much finally died. For me, in my opinion. Something of the kind. From now on, it's either PC or Nintendo. For me, not a single game is worth playing on console these days. Every possible long-anticipated title finally came out, and you can more or less judge the PlayStation 4 generation, right? Like, objectively, more or less. I mean, obviously, your opinion is gonna be subjective, but the generation is finally done, right? So you can finally kind of review it. And, okay, so everything finally came out. Every single one of those fucking video games released this year or whatnot. It's either trash or 30 FPS, 10 degrees FOV on console. Basically no reason to play this game on console if you have even moderately okay PC. My game of the year is Bayonetta/Vanquish combo re-release for PlayStation 4. It is by far the best disc money can buy for the system. Closely followed by SMT3 HD Remaster, not as the best purchase, as a Game of the Year nominee. Slightly above the pile of thoughtless trash and soulless mediocrity is FF7 Remake. It gets a very honorable mention as the first moderately good Final Fantasy game since, 7, subjectively. We came full circle finally, for some people like myself, for example. The next good Final Fantasy game after all the 7 remakes are out is expected to be 5 Remake, I guess. Even though none of these 3 releases are original, So FF7 remake, obviously not very original. SMT3 HD remaster, obviously not very original. Bayonetta/Vanquish, again, it's two games, but I count it as one release. So yeah, two of them basically being just ports, like SMT3, I mean, and Bayonetta/Vanquish. Basically just ports. And FF7 remake, yeah, okay, but nonetheless, not super original. So even though none of these three religious releases are original, everything else this year was so bad and or mediocre, while you probably could name one, the least terrible one, that's not enough to become the game of the year, if you know what I'm saying. In my opinion. So, unless you want the game of the year to still be essentially a bad game, just not the worst, you gotta include in the pool of nominees not just the games, but the releases of the year. And that's where Bayonetta/Vanquish and SMT3 Remaster allow gaming to stand at least somewhat upright in 2020. So yeah, 2020, there's basically no game of the year for me. I can only give you a release of the year. Can't be Temtem, it's early access. Genshin? Well, maybe, but that's an always online service game, which means it won't exist in a few years, and even if it does, it can completely change at any moment. So, while it is definitely the best always online service game ever, I don't think products like that are competing with actually finished, solidified, and complete video games. Maybe Atsumare Dobutsu no Mori, known to you as Animal Crossing, insert random English words here, but not on my watch. I'm a huge fan of Dobutsu no Mori, and I have hundreds and hundreds, not thousands, but more than a few hundreds, trust me, of hours in Tobidase on 3DS. I'm actually not sure how to accent this whole thing. People don't really say it.
Tobidase? Tobidase?
And, okay, I'll be the first one to tell you, Dobutsu no Mori is more of an app than it is a video game. On top of that, Atsumare is so not better at all in, like, any way than Tobidase. On its own, it's cute and all, but as a, like, logical continuation of things, from, like, Tobidase, there's barely anything other than frustration in it. And if you want to know my opinion on the games this year you were made to think you like, I clicked through a certain video of a certain person I know you adore, let's call him Happy Christopher, and you basically have the same taste as him because his job is literally just telling you your opinion, telling you what you want to hear, because your parents don't care about you and you need validation of your opinion on certain video playthings for children from an unhealthy idiot loser on the internet to make you feel better. So in case you're worried I'm ignoring most of the quote-unquote important games of this year, here are my mentions of the cleverly marketed products gamers were sold in 2020. Fall Guys, fad, not a game, dead already, multiplayer only, LOL. How can something like that even be mentioned in like a game of the year list or something? I don't know. Among Us. Okay, this one is ridiculous. First of all, it's obviously a fad, but more than that, it's just a mafia app. What if a really good chess app comes out and, I don't know, called like Rapapapapa and becomes the most popular thing in the world for a month or something? Chess actually kind of, is doing this thing right now. Would someone all of a sudden forget that chess had existed this entire time? And like, Rapapa is the best new fucking game ever. Probably not, right? People would probably still be aware of the fact that chess, is kind of a thing. And this is just an app. Why is it different for Mafia then? Among Us, give me a break. Phantasmaphobia, okay, well, that's a fad, made popular by content creators, just like BR and co-op survival games. No one's ever gonna play that in 2021 onward, unless the devs do another quote-unquote influencers marketing campaign. Call of Duty Modern Warframe or whatever, another yearly BR. In 2021, there'll be another, or 5 probably. Yay, wow, so interesting. Such video game will totally be playable in a year, I tell ya. Ori and something, same game again. Doom Eternal, same game again basically, but this time even more cartoony. Wow, so much better. So much less insanely generic and boring. Ghost of a Ubisoft sandbox. It's another Assassin's Creed Origins, which is not the worst thing in the world, but who cares if a different team made it? This time, it's real pretty though. Yay! No, we've already played that game. Wow, guys, I can't get enough of your standards for entertainment. Let's make a video game together. I'm sure it'll be pure fun. Now, straight to the first cancelled review, Ryuga Gotoku 7. Hikari to Yami no Basho, something like that. Oh, Yukue. It's like whereabouts or whatever. This is gonna be a long segment, but I'm not making a separate video out of it because if I'm gonna hate on something this badly, it needs to be done properly. It needs to be a proper critique. I feel like I would need to go way more in depth, and there'd need to be way more like very specific examples of what I'm bitching about, presented, shown in the video. Fortunately, I'm not a video essayer, and I am in possession of this thing called life. And I'm not spending a month worth of my free time working on a video about something I hate. So my review is blatantly unfinished, and in the end is just a really, really long rant. And I wouldn't upload something like that separately. Why? To let people know how upset I can get over a digital toy for children? I already did 2 of such videos. Both have Cyberpunk 2077 in the title. But I consider those ones to be essentially PSAs. Yet actually reviewing something objectively bad for an hour, having spent dozens of hours writing and producing the video, that's a whole other level of what the fuck am I doing with my life? So I couldn't bother to finish the script, or rather to rewrite it properly. I cannot force myself to do it. I just don't care about that shitty, stupid, boring game. It bores me to tears just thinking about it, let alone talk. If you want to know how it all sorta looked at the moment I decided that's enough, I'm done.
Strap your seatbelts now.
If you don't want any of that, please skip to a different segment. I am not proud of what is going to happen next at all. I am pretty pissed off at Ryuga Gotoku 7. This game is like a 100-hour-long lie. It's not a scam, it's not Cyberpunk, obviously. It's not even a bad game, really. At all, in fact. But oh my god, is it disappointing. Is it even a Gotoku game? Not even in spirit. Is it a good JRPG? No. And it was done so on purpose. That's what's like the most frustrating about it. Intentional mediocrity. The more I wrote this script, more I realized that because of how boring and pointless this game is, what do you know? I don't like talking about it. The only objective talk I can give it is if I completely separate it from the story, the characters, and its open world, and the rest of the series, obviously. If you do that, Yakuza 7 is a relatively complex game, and with a lot of things to do, even with some degree of variety, although not remotely close to 6 in that aspect. As soon as you factor in the story, however, the characters, and the shitty, pointless, bloated open world, you gotta admit that you gotta admit that at least 50% of the time you spend in the game is simply terrible. How can I review a game like that spoiler-free? Because ultimately it's the story that ruins everything and in the end leaves very few good things to note about the game. And I have no interest in deeply analyzing things I don't like. I'm not a video essayer who has nothing better to do with their college life. If the game is trash but popular with normies, sure, it can be called out. But it's not gonna change what normies think, and the rest of the viewers who already agree with your position, well, they already think the same way. What's the point of this circle jerk of negativity? And the same thing goes for the positive analysis videos, actually. If you already like the game, you'll like the game. You don't need my video. If you don't like the game, my video is not gonna change that. And if you don't know the game, you don't want to be recommended something new. No, you just want to see someone complain about a game or being hyped about a game. There can be nothing in between. There is practically infinite amount of games to bitch about, everything modern, for example, and also near infinite amount of games to praise, and it's all pointless. It's all just circle jerking between people who already agree with each other. And of course, there can be, nothing in between, like honest reviews of all kinds of games, most of which are probably just okay, for example. Because people don't watch those videos. That's why, according to Access Media, every single thing that comes out is either the new best thing ever or the new worst thing ever. Only two options, basically. This whole culture is pointless. However, I shouldn't explain while talking about a good game is an infinitely better waste of your time and a healthier waste of your time than bitching about something already obviously bad. With Ryuga Gotoku 7, though, nothing is obvious until you, I would say, almost complete it. It is almost impossible to predict whether you'll end up hating the game or loving the game. Because the game does a very weirdly feeling, but I guess somewhat effective job at tricking you into thinking it's probably good, or maybe it's about to get good. And there's just something wrong with you at the moment. Your perception is not clear somehow. Maybe you're not in the right mood. It pretty much tricks you into thinking it's good, and you're just not getting it. It hasn't clicked yet, you know? It's almost genius, really. That would be the highest praise I can give it. Well, that and the fact that honestly, just the sheer amount of side activities pretty much saves the game. There's enough systems in 7 to be like, hey, there is some entertainment to be had. There is enough quality there to say, hey, this is a well put together game. But all that quality and entertainment are watered down by an ocean of intentionally chosen sub-mediocrity and creative bankruptcy. And yes, you are correct. This is a very long video and it is almost entirely just me hating on the game that technically isn't even all that bad. It's the exact kind of video I just said myself I'm not interested in doing. But guess what? I've decided I'm gonna be reviewing Yakuza 7 before I even launched it for the first time. It only gets worse after the first 10 to 15 hours, but by then I was already taking notes and basically writing the script. Plus, at the end of the day, it was still a Gotoku game by RGG Studio and Sega. So no matter what, I had to see it all. I had to see it through first-person experience, controller in hands. Plus, I got it new. You gotta support your loved ones, and the steel box is real pretty. I knew I wasn't gonna sell it, even if I stopped playing it, so I might as well, get it over with. By the time I was done, especially if you factor in the note-taking and the writing of the script and the rewriting of it, the game wasted well over 100 hours of my life. In fact, if you're gonna be factoring in, like, the script thingies, oh no. Now I might as well get this video over with, otherwise it's all been for nothing. I'm not going to particularly enjoy what's about to happen, but there's no turning back now. You ain't gonna agree with anything I'm about to say. But guess what? You love random YouTube fuckos' opinions on your meaningless digital playthings. Don't even try denying it. Well, here is one for you. It's an honest one though, so you might not like it. For what it's worth, I am not sorry for being able to observe and think on my own. Okay, credentials first, maybe, even though we are really far from anything that can be categorized as first. Nevertheless, I played almost every game in the extended franchise multiple times and absolutely love most of them. Wouldn't mind replaying a bunch more times every single one. Even the ones I don't necessarily love, I still like a lot, and think those are extremely quality games with nearly unparalleled amount of soul and heart. Heart being something like the raw story and the characters, and soul, I don't know, something like the care that went into crafting the worlds and the general spirit of the franchise: music, humor, the feel of the combat systems, side activities, optional quests, all of that. Having said all that, 7 is the first Gotoku game I don't even know if I like at all. In my opinion, the biggest tragedy with 7 is that it was sabotaged on the very basic level. What am I talking about? Your first impression of 7 is almost guaranteed to be that you're looking at a parody. Kinda like what the Stick of Truth was to Skyrim. Almost exactly, in fact, since, 7 is also turn based. But the unfortunate reality is that, that couldn't be further from the truth. The game is no parody. This game is very seriously inspired by all the things you think it's making fun of. Because you would think in order to make a parody of something, you need to have a very clear understanding of the absurdity and stupidity of the things you're going to be parodying. You need to get what is bad about the practices and game design and writing you're going to be making fun of. And you would find ways to design your own good game, sort of revolving around the same general design ideas, and write your own good story, sort of revolving around the same creative ideas. Needless to say, you need to be pretty good creatively yourself if you want to properly make fun of something. In fact, your final product needs to do not only that, it needs to stand on its own. But what do you call a parody that completely falls into all the same bad practices as the original material? Well, it's not a parody anymore. It's just a comedic-ish copy. That's what Yakuza 7 is. And that's what I mean by sabotage, quote unquote. This game is not a comedy. It is not a parody. It is an honest attempt to make a Dragon Quest-like JRPG by literally copying all the predictable, tired, frowned-upon practices of the genre that you basically don't even see in modern JRPGs anymore for very good reasons. Why did they do that? I've no idea. My thought after about 20-ish hours was, quote-unquote, parody gone wrong? Question mark. But no, if you play the game longer, it becomes all but very, very obvious 7 was never intended to be that. It was never conceptualized as that, written as that. It was very intentionally made the most cliché, non-impactful, unable to be taken even remotely seriously video plaything for children it could be. Why would you design a game like that? On a bet, maybe? Or maybe if you hate the publisher and trying to sabotage the franchise, for example, maybe something like that. The game intentionally finds inspiration in bad game design and writing practices. It is honestly quite fucking amazing. It is almost like the creative higher-ups behind the game had no idea what a good video game is like. They got inspired by the shit left on the cutting room floor of game design history and decided, yes, that is exactly what we need to do. Somehow, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Dragon Quest is bad. In fact, I quite like the Dragon Quest games. But a DQ game works as a package deal. Nyakuza 7 is obviously not a full package Dragon Quest game, right? It only borrows elements from it. The worst ones to bring into borderline any other game. Because this is not old school, it's It's the worst kind of school. It's fucking mid school. Remember the 2000s when most JRPGs were literally just the same game repackaged daily with the same story, same characters, same art design, and oh my god, yes, absolutely identical mindless grind-based gameplay. That's not even the case anymore. JRPGs are actually very diverse these days in terms of gameplay, story, art style, obviously. Nyakuza 7, like a Dragon Quest, however, basically stands outside of the modern state of the genre as potentially the only game on the market in generations intentionally built around bad, outdated design and writing practices of JRPGs. I kid you not, it's almost like they deliberately wrote and then made a bad game. Nyakuza 7 leaves me dumbfounded every time I try to find any kind of meaning, any kind of worth in experiencing it. I would have to think real hard to come up with a game worthy of your time less, released in 2020. I cannot believe this is the official 7th game in the series, and Judge Eyes is a spin-off. Honestly, here is yet another confirmation that we live in a dark timeline that has everything backwards for no reason. It just is, because it's the universe of anti-normality. On its own, 7 is not a bad game, okay, but it should be obvious by now that I didn't love or even especially like it. Oh, and by the way, before I say anything else, the fact that 7 is like a traditional JRPG, yeah, quote unquote, yeah, well, in the worst possible way, maybe. You could say it's generic JRPG, but that would be, like, I don't know, that would be an insult to generic JRPGs, I think. So it's a game like that, right? But all the characters are grown-ups. Middle-aged even. And that is somehow revolutionary. That is the biggest load of bullshit anyone trying to defend this shovelware can come up with. First of all, no, you can easily subtract age from every single character in 7, every single playable character in 7, okay? Until they are in mid to late teens, and it wouldn't break their character at all. Would break their, background stories, but, the character? No, wouldn't break their characters at all. And second, is that really the hill you're dying on? So, you don't want a good video game, right? You just want a game with slightly older than you usually see in video games people running the show. Is that it? That takes priority, according to you, right? When was that a problem, you fucking weirdos? Kiryu is older than Ichiban. Even in 6, he is older than Ichiban in 7. But even if that wasn't the case, why is this a thing? What are you smoking? There are tons of people of all ages in all possible genres of video games. Are you insane or just that stupid? Probably no point in asking though, right? You should know that this is not a mainline Ryuga Gotoku game at all, and I liked 6 way more. I'll talk about it later maybe if I have the energy. Yes, Kasuga Ichiban is not the worst character we've played as in history of video games. And Adachi and Sayako can even be pretty awesome at times. Having said that, their collective story is an adventure and not a drama. The stakes never been lower. And it's not because the game is written as pure comedy, it's actually not. Its plot is completely serious, and most of the game is pretty damn serious. But still, at no point anyone is in any real kind of danger, or faces some shocking turns of events, or has to make a sacrifice. There are some dark things happening here and there, yes, but the characters, they just shrug them off literally next scene. In fact, the whole game has this very intentional, light-hearted Scooby-Doo kind of vibe. Again, not a bad thing, but rubbed against all of the seriousness, they cancel each other out and you're kind of left with nothing. It's just wrong for a mainline game, especially in the world where Jajais exists as a spin-off for no reason. And also, in general, I didn't like the story almost at all. Partially because, yes, all the silliness and the seriousness that, well, usually both present in, all the other games in the Gotoku franchise, here they end up actually canceling each other out, and you just left with nothing as your, primary emotion for this game. So yeah, in general, I didn't like the story almost at all. At first, I thought, oh, so this is gonna be basically like a series of fun side quests, and then there will be some especially big one, and that will be the end of the game. Well, okay, no. It takes approximately 20 and 30 hours for the main plot to get going. Until a pretty distant point from the beginning, the story is literally just a sequence of random things. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. In fact, I would have been totally fine to start a game like that with just immersing, myself in Ijincho without any urgency, any pressure from the main story. It is actually kind of revolutionary that RGG Studio finally wrote a game where vagabonding and doing fuck all kind of like the main marketing point of the entire franchise. That is not at odds with the main plot. Finally, it's pretty much part of it. Even if just for a few opening chapters. Unfortunately, yeah, I mentioned immersion. Yeah, in 7, it's probably the lowest it's ever been for the series. So yeah, about halfway through the game, an actual story sort of forms out of nowhere. One very in style for the main series, in fact. Unfortunately, basically none of the main characters have anything to do with any of it. They just end up going places, doing random things loosely related to whatever their small, insignificant goal is at the time. In fact, their lack of any kind of affiliation to the actual acting parties in the story, or personal stakes in the big undergoing conflict, a clear side maybe, for example. Lack of all of that is somehow something the game constantly brings up very proudly. The main characters basically have no friends until they bully the whole town into liking them out of fear of being completely destroyed by these unstoppable lunatics. These lunatics have no side, they basically fight for nothing, and they don't represent anything or anyone other than just the bigger concept of quote-unquote being better. And they're really not. They are borderline just bullies. Which, by the way, is another big point of the whole Gotoku franchise, representing higher ideals through your actions and, well, through your actions, mostly. That's what Kiryu is, or was, I guess.
俺は何人相手だろうと構わねえ。本物の極道ってやつをお前らに見せてやる。
He is the avatar of honor and justice. That's what he fights for in every game. He never fights just for himself or even just for his family, even though obviously those are the two main driven forces, I guess, for the plots of the games and for Kiryu as a character. But for example, in 6, Kiryu finds himself in a totally new place, as sometimes happens to him, right? And he makes friends at first with random locals just to get a hang on what is what and who is who in this place. Well, before long, he ends up becoming pretty much the Kashira of a small local underdog like Nyakuza family. Why? Because he gets involved. And he understands that since he's already in, he might as well take sides to fight for what is right. In 7, You play as bulletproof bullies who basically ruin everything for everyone because of personal vendettas so small and random. I honestly thought it was going to be just another side quest that is kind of part of the main story. And don't even get me started on the personal arcs each character sort of has. Fuck one of them so hard I can't even talk about it. Starts with Na, ends with Ba. Nearly dropped a spoiler. The story itself is fine. Kinda. In fact, the villains are pretty good. But the fact that the characters have no emotional connection to any of that, no alignment other than neutral better, it makes sense at first, like the very start of the game, save for the prologue. But it gets real fast when the plot starts actually going because it ultimately ends up being told the story from the worst possible perspective, a perspective of the characters who simply don't care because they're just so much better than all of this and are always busy worrying about some other random personal bullshit. So that's what you end up doing. You end up not caring. You end up being worried about some other random bullshit, like the business management minigame, maybe. You know? Stuff like that. And I still like most of the characters, playable and non-playable. But the playable ones, they, unfortunately, fight for nothing. Their role in the story is borderline insulting to storytelling. Okay, the world, Isezaki Ijincho, Yokohama, is way too big of a hub. I'm sorry, it just is. All for fuck's sakes of random encounters, more or less, and those get old. Traversing it is a chore, and it is by far the least condensed and detailed hub in the series. I'd say about 90% of Ijincho is rather low fidelity window dressing. Most of the town looks kinda like Akiba from Akiba Strip 2 for PS Vita and also PlayStation, I think 3 and 4. So yeah, Akiba Strip. Look the game up. That's basically how Ryuga Gotoku 7 looks. Just tons and tons of empty space, almost no people. By the way, something that pretty much the entire series struggles with ever since 3. And this time, extremely spaced out things to interact with, which kind of goes against, I don't know, the signature world design philosophy of the franchise, you know, to make a physically relatively small area very detailed and packed full of things to do and kind of believable in this fashion. If you haven't played the game yet, and while it's not a bad game, I'll be honest with you, I don't think you're necessarily losing all that much by skipping this one. Let me give it to you straight and simple. Ijincho is about 10 times as big as Kamurocho, and it has about the same amount of restaurants and only 2 convenience stores. Which, to hell with the restaurants, but the convenience store situation is straight idiotic. In general, for the amount of interesting and or just basically interactable things to do, the size of Ijincho doesn't make any sense, except one unit of sense, to make you run a lot and have a lot of random encounters, because teehee, we are quote-unquote parodying shitty JRPG practices, so let's make our game padded as well. Isn't that funny? My answer, no, you made your game intentionally worse than it could have been, you achieved nothing and lost a lot, almost everything in fact. Many congratulations. Needless to say, it doesn't feel at all like a Gotoku game. The devs even knew it because they put taxis everywhere, and in this game you will absolutely use them all the time. Unfortunately, the game doesn't explain that you have to interact with a given taxi to unlock it as a fast travel point. That was never the case in any of the previous games, you see. And also near the start of the game, you basically have no money at all, so you won't be using taxis, trust me. It is actually very cool how the story and the gameplay are kind of in sync at that point. The overall level of this like synchronicity at the beginning of the game is actually quite fascinating. It's actually really fucking good. But then it also falls very flat on its very face and kind of stays down there for a while. Just a few chapters in, when, in gameplay you can be anywhere between, say, like 300 like K and millions and rich, but the story keeps treating you like you're flat broke. Also, what the hell with exploration being stealth gated behind story progression? I explored the entire map before the end of chapter 5, and then the story triggers collectibles to appear all around it. Wow, how satisfying. And 6 and 0 did the same thing. 0 was way worse, by the way, but still, there's been, a few games since then. Can we please maybe finally fix this? Now, while the content is extremely spaced out, Ijincho is clearly not lacking it. 7 is pretty much the first game in the franchise that goes an actual extra mile to include as many, you could even say legacy minigames as possible. It's definitely not holding back, which is something that almost all of the Gotoku games since 3 were doing, honestly. With the small semi-exception of 0, but 0 was like just completely new take on the entire like classic Gotoku design, you could say, because 0 was basically 2 different Gotoku games, like fused into one. It's very hard to talk about 0. And the new and semi-new minigames, I think, are great. There's truly a crap ton of things to do this time. I'd say this is where most of the game's value is found, really. It's not even close to the amount of things to do in, say, 6. 0 is like the only one I can kind of compare it to. Even though I don't especially like how Betting Center works now, it's kind of like more janky somehow. And I hate how there's still no league/progression for the darts minigame introduced in 6, 8, I mean the renewed darts minigame introduced in 6. But I like how they made it a bit more challenging compared to 6. Used to be way too easy. It's more fun now, even if just a little bit. And by the way, I like the Dragon Engine version of most minigames, including the darts one, way better than they used to be in the games on the previous engine. I really like the darts minigame, if you haven't noticed. But in 6, there was at least some sort of kind of progression. There was a side quest related to it. And in 0, there was a bit of a progression, but not really a lot. In 7, there is nothing. Just nothing. And yeah, it hurts. It hurts. While on the topic of good things, I should probably say a few words about combat. While random encounters become real annoying, real lighting fast, the combat itself is fine. Pretty good even. It's basically the stick of truth in 3D. Oh, and if you don't play the game yourself, it's really not 100% obvious, but you don't control the character's positioning at all during combat. They move around the physical space on their own. So when doing certain attacks that have like AoE, or maybe can go through several enemies in a line, something of that sort, you need to be like quick about executing them, or just somehow time them, because enemies tend to spread out, in between moves, in between turns, rather. Turns, yes, not moves. Also, the combat is mind-numbingly easy, as is tradition, pretty much, with the series. Except for the bosses, who are like 20 levels higher than the grunts on their respective stages. So the nearest comparison is 6, obviously. That's the previous main line game, in the franchise. I guess since Judge Eyes apparently doesn't count, Sega doesn't want you to know about it. And, 6 was Super easy, even on hard. But there you could get at least a little bit of challenge if you started the game on hard. You know, it would have become very easy over time as you get like, get a few upgrades. In 7, the difficulty is just the scaling of the enemies, so you can't even change it until you go into New Game Plus. Well, because of the level difference, With a completely new character on hard, which essentially New Game Plus, you wouldn't be able to defeat even the very first enemy, because you're gonna be like level 1 and the first enemy is like level 50. You're dead. There's nothing you can do to that enemy. So the game doesn't allow you to do that. In other words, there is no way to make the game harder for yourself at all. It starts easy, and then as you grow your party and outfit your characters, it becomes even easier and easier and easier. And then you finish all the mini games and realize the charm of this town is probably the weakest in the franchise. And then you begin wondering if maybe you should finish Shenmue 3 or play Akiba Strip 2 again or anything else really. Graphics. I don't know if you need any additional info on the graphics. I already told you they kind of remind me of Akiba Strip 2, but don't get me wrong, the game still looks very good at times. There are tons of pop-in though. Compared to 6, facial animations of like low-tier dialogue are noticeably better. For some reason in 6 they were really, really weak. And you've probably noticed forever ago, compared to 6, the game looks brighter and desaturated. Pretty much the reverse of the Judge Eyes color correction. It is actually so bright I had to tone it down in the settings because daytime segments were giving me headache. I felt like I needed sunglasses. Other than that, I'm not sure what this color correction was supposed to achieve. A more boring look, I guess. At first I thought it was only... this type of color correction was only for the prologue, but no, that would have been brilliant actually. Unfortunately, the entire game was intentionally made to look washed out. You don't really notice it during nighttime though, so if it bothers you, don't worry, you can always play just a little bit of the main story and it'll be nighttime before you know it. There are way more side quests in 7 than there were in 6, I think, or at least it feels that way because of how boring 7 is. Most of them are very meh. I think generally 6 did them way better, and 0 obviously has the best ones in the whole franchise. A bit of a classic quality versus quantity situation maybe, but there is another factor at play here too. You see, 6 was a very condensed experience. You could even say it was a small game. Kinda long-ish, yes. Big, no. Yet for its size, it was insanely detailed, to the point of having 100% of all dialogue voice acted. 7 is a much bigger game. And for it still being essentially a budget video game, Ryuga Gotoku Studio didn't really have much choice but to go back to how the rest of the series was before 6. Technically, they already went back with Judge Eyes, but since, Sega doesn't want anyone to know about that game, I guess it doesn't count. So what is going back to how things were before 6? It means not voice acting pretty much half of the game. It's not exclusive to side quests, it's not exclusive to minigames related interactions. It's exactly how it used to be back in the good old days. No matter what you do, be it the main story or a side story, expect about 50% of the scenes to be without any voice acting. And if you don't believe me that it's actually 50%, if you think I'm being silly, well, yeah, the game doesn't really start like that, 50% of things not being voice acted. Even though there is a fair bit of dialogue that is not voice acted even at the very beginning of the game, you just keep playing, just keep playing. If you want to see it for yourself, you'll see what I mean. It actually gets to pretty much 50%, if not even maybe slightly more. Now, in a perfect world, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Unfortunately, ever since 2020, Japan Postal Service, in case you don't know, EMS is part of that. It's not a standalone DHL-like service. Japan Postal Service doesn't ship to half the world, and the European versions of Ryuga Gotoku 7 and 6 for PlayStation 4 don't have the Japanese text option, because Japan is the only place in the world where you're allowed to enjoy a console without constant suffering. And Sony and Nintendo also never get tired reminding you of that. Actually, 6 is also available on PC now, so literally no reason even mentioning the PlayStation 4 and localization situations. Actually, I'm not sure. Like, probably if you get yourself a PC version of 6, and even if it allows to fully switch the language to Japanese, you're probably not gonna get the Japanese version, though. You're just gonna get the European/American version with, like, well, Japanese text, you know, and obviously sound. But you're probably not gonna get the actual Japanese version. You're not gonna get all the content that is only available in the original version. So I guess my argument kind of stands, but, you know, technically, if all you want is just play the game in Japanese, and, you know, you don't live in Japan, actually, the only way to do so would be to kind of counterintuitively, you know, get the PC version, because that version might actually allow you to, you know, play in Japanese, or at least, you know, mod in Japanese into your version of the game. But yeah, the console version, you know, European and American versions of both 6 and 7, yeah, shit out of luck. You can only play in English. With 7, however, the situation is a bit escalated, because in 6, you can just turn the subtitles off, for example, because everything is voiced. And yes, obviously, you know, all the menus and stuff is in English, but maybe you can live with it. In 7, well, you can still turn the subtitles off, I think, but there's no getting around having to read the non-voiced scenes, which is kind of most of the game. And that is where one of the worst modern localization teams strikes back, the one responsible for the title Nyakuza. This is probably their worst work yet. This is on the level, if not worse, with what was done to their to the first PlayStation 2 game in terms of absolutely unnecessary. Okay, here's my list. 1. Extensive swearing and overall Americanization, bitch, come on, yo, bruh, shit, fuck. 2. Reversing names. Again. But it's a necessary thing, really. When a Westerner hears a family name before a given name, they die, you know. 3. Inventing names, words, and terminology that doesn't exist in Japanese, English, or the script for the game in order to make, you know, what is happening on the screen less different from the Western cultures, I guess. 4. And also just allowing a ridiculous amount of complete rewrites of the original script in terms of meaning, you know, of individual things and like character lines, just complete rewrites. 5. Misspellings. Especially infuriating when they intentionally complicate a word's spelling to make it look better in English. It's like giving a fresh steaming pile of shit a whole other depth dimension, you know, it's very professional. A killer amount of translation errors, obviously made by people who had no context and were just translating a Microsoft Excel sheet through Google Translate and then slightly correcting the resulting English. That's something I can do, by the way, please hire me. And there are even mistakes made in English all over the place, in fact. The kind you usually get when, you know, you start rewriting an already finished sentence and then forget to erase some of the original sentence. Or just forget to actually type a word or two, those kind of mistakes. And just the overall style of writing, wording, I guess you could say, is very poor, to the point of honestly being pretty hard to read at times. Kind of like my own script, like how they write subtitles for the characters who are supposed to speak quote-unquote provisional dialects, borderline unreadable, and also kind of offensive. Who the fuck are you to decide Kanto is like this pure and clean Kali accent, Kali accent, and the rest of Japan is basically all like malicious and undereducated cockneys and hillbillies? What the fuck? Dialect, which is not really not that big of a thing anymore, and accent is not the same thing. Most people just speak standard Japanese. Hyojungo, I think it's called. And it's safe to say every prefecture and even every area of a prefecture has its own like dialect thingies. Does every single one need an English accent assigned to it? It's the same as if just like imagine like there was like a piece of media in English and you had two people talking, one from Boston and the other from LA. And there was a Japanese dub of that piece of media, and they decided to dub the Boston dude in Kansai because obviously it's not really the same type of accent, that people from California have, and so it's a different one. It's a different one in English, kind of, so it needs a different accent or dialect or whatever in Japanese then. Would that be logical? Probably fucking not. So what the hell are you doing, Yakuza team, or whatever, the translation team? Just completely wrong, trash approach to localizing content. Don't get me wrong, the localization of 6 was bad too, really, really bad, but at least there weren't as many mistakes, ? Or maybe I just didn't notice a lot of them because the world was just talking to me the entire time. I didn't have to read much. Long story short, 7 was damaged by shitty localization way more than 6. And unfortunately, it kills almost all of the charm the game relies on to like keep the player numb to a lot of the game's shortcomings. The potentially game-saving charm, of 7 would be, the Japan. And there is no Japan in 7. Localization just completely destroys all of that. Therefore, while 7 is not a badly made game, to me, in it, there's almost no enjoyment. I'd even go as far as sort of recommending the localized version of 6. It's tolerable. If the original is not adequately available to you, yeah. 7 though, no, stay away. There's no soul in there left by the localization, at least. Obviously, I haven't played the original. It probably feels different. It probably is more immersive. I don't think it would completely save the game, though, but it would probably feel better. Well, what if I don't speak Japanese, you fucking nerd? Oh, well, I don't speak Japanese either. My Japanese is terrible, but unless you don't push yourself, you never improve. Just do whatever you want, but won't. Do whatever you want, then. But I'd recommend maybe looking into other games. Like, have you played Dragon Quest, for example? I'm just saying this is not worth your time or money because it's a compromised, censored, rewritten, inferior to the original. I'm gonna just say it, okay? Whitewashed product. I don't doubt for a second that if the highest responsible for this garbage fire translation asshole was allowed to, they translate every texture that has Japanese text on it, remodel all the signs, renamed all the characters to like Jimmy's, Billy's, Jackson Jones, and probably just, rewrite basically the entire script so that, this is actually happening in like New York City. Well, at least in 7, they no longer attempt to incorrectly teach you stuff about Japanese culture doing load screens. It was so fucking funny. They were trying to teach you stuff that wasn't even in the game because, during localization process, they threw away that exact Japanese stuff and called it something else, something American. It's like some characters would occasionally say something about gyudon. And in 6, you are even tasked in one of the like mini games / side quest thingies to go and find some gyudon. But in the game itself, gyudon doesn't exist. It's beef bowl or like whatever the fuck. So if you don't know what gyudon is, good fucking luck finding one in 6, figuring out what the game wants from you. Game-breakingly, completely atmosphere and just game logic shattering localization. Or how they teach you that, Yakuza is actually a bit of a rarely used word because it's a bit harsh and can be kind of insulting, which, okay, cool. So instead of Yakuza, people would often say Gokudo, which they misspell in the game, by the way. would be problem number one. But problem number two, the word Gokudo is not even in their localization. They just type Yakuza every time a character says Gokudo. What's the point in any of this, like, info dump during load screens then? Who was it made for? Who was paid to do this? Can I get their job? Oh, and they did the same thing for the word Chimpira. Just like with the word Gokudo, you know, people do say Chimpira from time to time in 6 and in all of the Ryuga Gotoku games, really. And, you know, one of the load screens explains, you know, the word for some reason in these like bits of trivia, you know, during load screens, but the word itself is not in their translation. They just, you know, they type something else every time, like punk or something like that. Why the fuck do you like... okay, what is happening?
Trivia BS.
Why the fuck is there... Now, maybe allow me to talk a little more, just tiny bit more about 6, because I also more or less just played it right before 7, and after 7 as well, by the way, and was literally crying at the end of the opening flash forward despite seeing it for the 4th time. Throughout this bitching, I used 6 a lot as an example of a better game. But the thing is, I know you probably hate it, and I pretty much agree with you, so hear me out. As a side disclaimer, 6 and 7 were the only ones I played in English since 1 on PlayStation 2. So I don't know anything about, don't care in the slightest, and not commenting on localization quality of 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, Hokutoga Gotoku, and Judge Eyes, or Of the End, for that matter. I don't really remember how Of the End is called in English. Probably Apocalypse or something like that. The zombie one. You know the one I'm talking about. Maybe it's called 2020, I don't know. Okay, so 1 and 2 are brilliant. Some of my favorite games of all time, in fact. Both Kiwami games are way worse, especially the first one. If you cannot be bothered to find the HD remastered disc of 1 and 2 for PS3 or Wii U, or to emulate yourself some PlayStation 2, I recommend skipping the Kiwami games altogether. Just start with 3, it will give you a brief summary of 1 and 2, or any other game, by the way. You know, any other game would give you a brief summary of the previous games as well. Zero was okay, and great at the same time. Slightly less of a mess than 4 and 5, but ultimately, just like 4 and 5, it has huge pacing issues, arguably even more crippling than, you know, in the cases of 4 and 5. If you played Zero, you know what I'm talking about, and it really stands in the way of proper storytelling and immersion. Good game, but very flawed. Majima's part of the story is insanely good, and should have been the whole game. Kiryu's story borderline ruins everything. Also, Majima is so much more powerful than Kiryu in combat, it's not even funny. Playing as Majima on hard is essentially gaming journalist difficulty. Playing as Kiryu on hard is like Dante must die all of a sudden. Until you get the stone that prevents enemies from ganking up on you. It's like you're switching between 2 absolutely different games, and that's the case actually. Zero is quite literally 2 different, like, Ryuga Gotoku games-ish, fused into one experience for no reason. Not one after the other, they are literally fused, unfortunately. So you kind of, you know, you're switching between 2 different games, all constantly, kind of. Each campaign has its own set of, you know, boring tutorials, which kind of ruins the first several hours of playing as Majima, for example, because you've just been through all of them as Kiryu, and now it's like you're starting a whole new game again. Honestly, if you get tired of playing the series, because let's be honest, 3, 4, 5, and 0 are basically the same game with different stories, even though I just said several times that 0 is like a completely different beast. But nevertheless, yeah, kinda like the same game with different stories. So if you play them, like, you know, one after the other, ooh, you can get a severe case of burnout. Just watch the Majima cutscenes from 0 on YouTube. Yeah. You can even do the same with 4 and 5. You're not gonna miss too much. In terms of gameplay and immersion, if you played 1, 2, and 3, you've hit the peak, boy. It's all gonna be degrees of disappointment further down the road. Until 6, in my opinion, which immersion-wise, I think is fantastic, finally. So 3 is pretty idiotic, but it tries to do a new thing. It semi-tries to semi-find direction to expand the series into. If you liked 4 and 5, 3 is basically the starting point for the franchise as you know it. 1 and 2 were very different. It's a very, very fun game, and I think more or less the entirety of its point was like providing an actual happily ever after type ending to the Kiryu saga, unlike what 2 did. Also, the game was almost unplayably blurry for some reason, either due to extremely low render resolution or like the shittiest possible anti-aliasing. I don't know. But yeah, wow, the blur was strong with that one. Then 4 was like, no, you're not getting your happily ever after. And also, I want to tell 48 stories at the same time. Very good game, but unfortunately, it is very flawed by attempting to do something very stupid that nobody was asking for. Telling 48 stories at the same time. Meaning, Akiyama is awesome. Akiyama is fucking awesome, but the story in general, if you consider the entirety of the game, is a hot fucking mess. There is no rhythm, no pace to any of it. I cannot emotionally connect with 4. 5 is basically the same way. A very good game with a story that is a bit hard to emotionally connect with because of pacing issues and the overall clusterfuck nature of it. But there is a but. That ending. I don't feel like crying right now, so I'm not talking about it. That ending redeemed and actually ended everything in the best possible meaningful way. It managed to make all of the mess that were 4 and 5 completely worth it. Attaching a direct continuation of the Kiryu story to it would be a crime against all the previous games and our suffering through 4 and 5. Most of 5, rather. And then we have 6, a direct sequel to 5. Great. What 6 did, especially after 4 and 5, was basically comedic at that point. It goes out and finds the slightly animated corpse of Kiryu Saga asleep hugging a Dakimakura with 5's ending written on it, wakes it up and starts arguing with it. Again. Yeah, and it's basically all the same crap, boiling down to the same thing we've all figured out, well, definitely since 3. Goes something like this. As long as Kiryu is alive and is in Japan still for some reason, trouble will always find him, and or his friends and family. And one of those times, it will be something very serious you cannot recover from in one way or another. It won't be something, you can just flex a little bit and say like, oh, you mess with me, you get fucked. And, all the enemies just run away from you. And Kiryu, for some reason, keeps he keeps trying to start a new life in Japan, despite the fact that he should have left a decade ago. So yeah, it is absolutely obvious that as long as Kiryu is alive and still in Japan for some reason, it's not even... Trouble will always find him and or his family and friends, and it'll be a bad fucking time, okay? And it's not even just about him, by the way. I mean, it's the entire country, including, criminal underworld and just all kinds of underworlds and just all kinds of people in general know who Haruka is. In case of the criminal underworld, they've known who Haruka is since fucking 10 years ago, more or less. Imagine Kiryu is dead. Do you really at all not see Haruka at some point being, fucked with? Yeah, she's basically his daughter. Japan is not a safe place for her at all. And yeah, so the story is something I really want to spoil the entirety of. right now to you here. But yeah, I still want to talk about the story of 6, really, because 6 is, it's fascinating.
More like fascinating how tone deaf it is in relation to the ending of 5.
But no, I won't spoil the whole thing. I will hardly spoil anything, in fact, because I believe 6 is a really good game. In fact, it's probably one of my favorites of the series. Just answer me this: what is the whole series about? If your answer is something like family, I think you'd be pretty correct. But why does it always have to be a no rest for the wicked type of story about exploiting Kiryu's only weakness, his family? You know, basically the entire, like Ryuga Gotoku line of video games is kind of like about torturing Kiryu, more or less. It's just so low, so exploitative and hacky and cheap. And it's a direct sequel too, Well, kinda. It shows you how things completely fall apart into absolute oblivion right after the ending of 5. Essentially retconning it. Just like 5 did to 4. Just like 4 did to 3. Only this time, the writers take it even further, darker, more hopeless than ever. More shock value, deeper life-ruining mistakes that you cannot undo. More drama, more value. In a place or two, those things don't even make much sense. Like, for example, and I don't mean during the main portion of the game, I mean like right after the ending of 5. Where the fuck is Akiyama? And also, what the fuck is he doing most of the main portion of the game? And during the ending, nothing? He just assumes, oh, well, they don't need me there since, Kiryu is on the case. The whole thing screams hacky, manipulative, and same shite again. All of that being said, the story is actually really good, and the characters are brilliant, including most of the villains. The variety in gameplay is basically unparalleled. You always do something new. And the graphics are absolutely amazing. The European and American versions are missing half the music, yes. But the thing with it is, that's all licensed music. And I never count licensed music towards, towards the final value of any game's audio. Licensed music in a video game is rarely anything but the director or producer smugly flexing their deep and sophisticated taste in music, i.e. what Spotify one day randomly recommended them after the newest Perry Carey song finished playing. So, yeah, I'll enjoy a game like Ryuga Gotoku 6 without the licensed music. It is still a very good, brilliant game. Oh, one thing though. For some reason, when you're in Kamurocho at night in 6, the ambience audio track has a very noticeable constant high-pitch artifact. Can you hear it? It was driving me insane. RGG Studio, please hire me. Yes, 6 does feel as a bit of a tech demo, and it provides a way worse ultimate ending for the saga than 5, or any other previous game for that matter. It kinda ruins everything, and it leaves a lot of the rest of the characters way more unnecessarily permanently scarred than they were at the end of 5. Things are objectively worse off now, beyond any doubt. All because of 6. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, 6. But you know what? At least that game had a soul, and a pretty big heart. And I honestly loved the Dragon engine. I think it eliminated a lot of the jank. It contributed tremendously to immersion. And I even very controversially like the Dragon Engine combat better, honestly. And the redesigned minigames are way better than the ones from the PlayStation 3 engine, way better. And I just played both 6 and 7. So me talking up 6 is not nostalgia driven. And the games are completely different too. So it's not me being tired of the gameplay formula. 7? I'm sorry. It's playable, kind of. I'd say about 51% of the time. You could say it's a mixed bag, but the balance in the mix is not where it needs to be to qualify for an overall positive impression. And I even like some of the characters, I just don't feel emotionally connected to this world, kinda like the real one. And it it could be the translation. That is definitely possible. But the parts of the game that are voice acted and you don't need the shitty subtitles for still don't really resonate with me. I could say it's a fine turn-based RPG, but that part of the game is so easy and mindless, it might as well not exist or be purely automatic, like idle RPG kind of deal. Yakuza 7, and yes, I'm saying Yakuza 7, the localized version, single-handedly and completely destroyed my interest in ever picking up, for the biggest example, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, a game I really wanted to get a first-hand opinion on and make a video about. If I started with FF7 Remake, I probably could have tolerated it, but after playing like what? Code Vein, Ryuga Gotoku 6 and 7, the last two combined were almost like 250 hours of 30 FPS, which is very physically straining. No, I'm done. Thank you, PlayStation. And for me personally, this technically is not as important as the fact that I can't play the version of the game I want, but universally, here is by far the biggest question mark over a non-Nintendo console ownership. If at least your video games weren't crossing my eyes and causing migraines, Sony, literally taking my eyes out of my skull and tying them into a knot, maybe then I could try tolerating the sick combination of censorship and creative freedom your localization companies act out to, at least get some impression of the games I want to check out. But 30 FPS lock without any way of lowering the visual fidelity to get 60, no. Fucking go play your games yourself, Sony. And PS5 will be no different, by the way, just you wait. As soon as devs stop making games for base PS4 and the Pro, they'll start squeezing out way more graphics out of the PS5. And 30 FPS will again be established as the target performance for the cinematic, like, AAA trash experience. Because since the quote-unquote next-gen games are still essentially being made for PS4 and Xbone, obviously PS5 can run their slightly upgraded graphics at 60. Obviously it can. Once those old systems are out of the picture, don't be surprised if Uncharted 5 or Red Dead 3 are locked 30. And by the way, 60 FPS on modern monitors that have pretty much no motion blur caused by slow pixels, it looks pretty damn choppy too, I'll tell you a secret, actually. The choppiness you see even when you play at 60 Hz, it's there, even at 240. No joke. Because LCD technology is trash and is only good for phones. For anything else, SRT is way better. Or rather, it would have been better if it still existed. I'm sorry, kids, you were lied to. SRT wasn't bad at all. It was not only good, it was better than LCD. I'm being real, this is not a joke. In motion, an SRT monitor working at like 720p 60, for example, looks a million times better than LCD working at like 4K 240 Hz. Why do you think people only recently, relatively recently, started bitching about frame rates left and right? Because it didn't used to be a problem. On SRT, even 30 FPS feels fine. That's how a lot of the games used to play back in the day. Nobody was bitching about that. Well, there's only one way to see if I'm lying. Go get yourself an SRT monitor if you want to call me out on, bullshitting here. Simple SRT monitors should be real cheap these days. Go get one if you're curious. That being said, 144 Hz is already the standard on PC, and it sure as hell is a lot better than 60, okay? Why don't the new consoles run games at least 120 then, or at least somewhere between 60 and 120. Are you telling me PlayStation 5 cannot run Dark Souls 3 at, say, 75? Yeah? Is that what Sony is saying? In just a few years, no one will be buying 60Hz TVs or monitors anymore, for sure. What are you going to do then, Sony? You had 15 years to make 60 like a proper standard. 60 is actually outdated now. Are you again going to be 50% slower than the current standard for monitors? Might it have something to do with the fact that you'll eventually be going back to 30 anyway? Which is unplayable on modern monitors, by the way. Either way, home console is a huge waste of time and money, in my opinion, at this point. Nintendo is the only hardware worth buying, other than a gaming PC, or rather just a PC, because you would probably be an owner of a PC anyway, might as well turn it into a gaming machine and just, enjoy the best way of, experiencing home video gaming. And by the way, let me state again, what the fuck is up with having 60Hz as the cap of the system? Half the TVs can do higher refresh rate. Most indie games and remakes on PS4 Pro could definitely run at least a little bit faster. Are you telling me your system is capable of like 4K output, but it cannot do like 1080p 75Hz? Also, where's my DisplayPort or analog out for audio? Technically, those were my gripes with the PlayStation 4 so-called Pro, but it's also true for the PlayStation 5. Huh. Are you being real with me? Yeah, guys, PlayStation 5 is such a good purchase. It is so much more powerful than a PC for the same price. And you can, literally take no advantage of this hardware. What a fantastic deal. And you can live without Persona 5, trust me, or even Bloodborne. If you haven't played 5 yet, just play 3, preferably portable. Persona 3 Portable, the game's called. Then play 4, you'll notice a certain vector that'll make you far less hyped for 5. In fact, after 3 and 4, I suggest playing 2 and becoming very sad from realizing what the series could have been if only 4 didn't ruin it, and arguably 3 as well, the game I love, by the way, but it should have been a standalone type of thing. If anything, it's 4 and 5 that retroactively ruined 3, so not the other way around. And yes, technically the problems started with 3. I don't care because it's the best game ever made. It was only ruined retroactively, And yeah, don't pay any attention to the fact that the game is called the version of the game I want you to check out is called Persona 3 Portable. It's actually the best version of the game. Just trust me, okay? Hokuto ga Gotoku and Judge-Eyes videos were actually planned, but aren't happening now. I'm not paying money for their English translations. In fact, even if I was provided free copies, I'm not even sure if I'd ever get around to force myself to play them. And that's Fantasyland, Reality Land. I'm not doing it. In fact, there's an additional reason why I won't play them. I cannot. I fucking sold my console. A huge bulk of games purchased for me in Tokyo by a good friend of mine was recently sold back because international shipping still doesn't work. We've waited for like a year almost at this point. No change. You still cannot ship things from Japan. And half of those things I actually already played here in English while I was waiting, and the other half, well, I got a PS4 technically for streaming, but at least for leisure, right? To play something I can only play on PS4, I suppose. Well, why the hell would I keep keeping the console if the soonest I can play it is maybe next year or something like that, when the postal services are working again? Why the fuck would I keep it now? To play it next year? No, that's fucking stupid. I sold it. And by the way, I checked out the 10-hour-long demo of the HD remaster of Dragon Quest XI, a brilliant game I only very briefly seen on 3DS before. It's absolutely beautiful in HD, and it provided me with the perfect example of what the localization team thinks of you. Tell me if you notice anything weird.
俺の名前は神。覚えておいてくれよな。
I know a lot of you know that most of the time English subs don't follow what the characters are saying precisely. But let me just say this. Let me tell you this. If I was in charge of a localization and shipped a game where even just once a character clearly, audibly, even to people who don't speak the language, says one thing, but my subtitles say something absolutely else, especially if it's something like, I don't know, a character calling like somebody by name and my subtitles are actually something completely different. Oh, I was shown the in-game example of that. I'd be sweating so hard. I'd be so embarrassed. Just saying. Okay, back to summing up my time with Nyakuza 7. And yes, I'm a huge fan of A Head in Time, and that's where I got the pun from. You should all play A Head in Time if you haven't. It's borderline the best platformer ever. I kid you not. And yes, this is it. This is the end. I'm actually summing up my thoughts. Finishing Nyakuza 7 felt like I was 100%ing something like Assassin's Creed 3. I almost lost my fucking mind. If it's your first Gotoku game, I can see how all the cool Nyakuza stuff can be very impressive. And it makes it seem like a lot of love and attention to detail was put into it. But in reality, everything great about 7, outside of like 2.5 new minigames, was just copied and pasted from the previous titles. They even copied the entirety of the Kiwami 2 hubs, despite putting literally nothing to do there in 7. Just because they can. The games are on the same engine after all, and the studio behind them is the unparalleled master of asset flipping, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, hey, so they did it. They just did it. And it was endearing for a second, but how they played Kamurocho and Sotenbori segments in 7 is either a bad joke or the studio completely losing any kind of investment, emotional, into their craft, as well as respect for you and themselves. Oh my god. And what is new in 7 is honestly pretty terrible. The characters, primarily the main one, the story that doesn't even exist for about 40% of the game, and Ijincho quite frankly suck. It is actually very funny that the next game I played does literally the same thing. It contains a complete data copy-paste of the entirety of the world from the previous game. Yeah, that's it. My next cancelled review was going to be Gravity Daze 2. Again, made the decision to review it way before I started playing. Huge mistake. Shit game, don't want to talk about it. Same deal here. Stay if you want to know what happened. Skip if you don't care. I recommend the latter option. This review is way more unfinished than the previous one, therefore is much shorter. Which is a good thing. Other than not only playing that game, but also starting writing the review on it mid-playthrough, just not believing Gravity 2 can keep being bad for its entirety. My only regret is that in order for the next segment to make sense, I had to semi-finish the script, wasting more time writing about that boring, blurry shit game and making the segment longer than it was in its abandoned, unfinished form. I understand now why people don't know Gravity Daze, why it never comes up in discussions and comparisons. No one played Gravity 1, obviously, or the PS4 remaster for some reason. Probably because you all graphics whores heard about the original being a PlayStation video game, so you automatically checked out. Then Gravity 2 came out, and it was such a huge pile of nothing. Rather than giving the IP a boost, I would say it probably drove it deeper into obscurity. Until recently, I had no idea. I thought Gravity 2 was probably as good as 1, if not better. Why would I think otherwise? Now I know why nobody cares about Gravity Daze, even despite the brilliant remaster, even despite, the fact that the the original game was absolutely brilliant. Because when 2 came out, most of the potential new fans obviously started with 2. It's the most recent, so you of course can only play recent games. Understandably, they weren't impressed with 2 and wrote the entire IP off, deciding to definitely never bother with Gravity 1. Until now, I was very confused. I couldn't understand why the franchise was completely ignored by the community, despite Gravity 2, a new big entry, existing. Wasn't it supposed to bring the IP at least some form of new visibility? Well, what actually happened was probably quite the opposite. For what it's worth, I'm glad I know it now, because I can make this PSA. If you haven't, play Gravity 1, not 2. If you have, and also once you do, you're gonna want to see 2 with your own eyes anyway. So I'm not gonna tell you to stay away from it. That's not my message. My message is play Gravity 1. To explain why, I will now bitch about 2 and talk about 1 in a highly non-professional manner. This is not a review, not even remotely. I actually want you to know as little as possible about the game in case I somehow convince you to give it a chance. Starting with 2. If you're wondering why I am talking about a game that is neither good, important, or even at least relatively recent, initially I wanted to do a face-off between Gravity Daze 2 and Marvel's Speeder Mail, the ultimate 30 FPS superhero sandbox comparison, so to speak. The new Speeder Mail game is considerably overrated, which kinda grinds my gears, and of course, when talking about Speeder Mail, people compare it to every sandbox and superhero game ever except Gravity Daze, despite the fact that Gravity 2 came out only 1 year before it. To me, it seemed just proper ridiculous this time, you know. With the original, it was somewhat understandable, I guess. It was a Vita game. With the remaster, also somewhat maybe kinda understandable. The word remaster was in the title, and normies just aren't interested in something that is not 100% new. Or at least called a remake, I guess. But Gravity 2 is a completely new game, right? It must have been awesome, right? Why is it being ignored again? Well, having finally played Gravity 2, I sold my PlayStation 4, my original PlayStation 4, I mean, just a few months before Gravity 2 came out. They were unrelated to gaming personal reasons. I pretty much had to do it. So yeah, finally played it. I now, with heavy disappointment and off the scale bored to tears with Gravity 2, realized that there's almost nothing to talk about with this game outside of completely trashing the whole thing. And I totally understand now why the rebirth of the IP didn't happen, like, at all. Honestly, even despite 30 FPS, the game starts very promisingly. Gravity 1 is one of my favorite games ever, so with this one, I again decided to review Gravity 2 pretty much before I even got the console I played it on. Unfortunately, there can be no battle between 2 and Speeder Mail. Gravity 2 is technically a pretty alright game, or at least not like super bad, but my experience with it was much more disappointing than even with Nyakuza 7. For example, I couldn't even finish it. Gravity 2 might be the first game I dropped almost ever, really, because you see, I'm a big smart boy when it comes to my toys. I've been playing video games for almost like my entire life, and I can usually tell if something is worth trying out without having to confirm my bias with the corrupt reviewers who don't even know anything about video games most of the time. So I almost never play video games I'm not specifically interested in, therefore I borderline never play something I don't like, let alone something I hate or cannot find at least enough fun in to finish. Gravity 2 though, wow. I mean, what a bait and switch. There are some redeeming qualities about, like, Nyakuza 7, for example. It can definitely provide a bit of a feel of, well, Japan. And, well, it's gonna be both warm, fuzzy, and painful, as love tends to be. But it at least creates a world that is convincingly enough represents how things in Japan sort of look and kind of function. Gravity 2, it pretends to have a heart, regardless of which the story is both terrible and boring. In fact, half the missions are trailing missions straight from Assassin's Creed 4, and a big portion of the other half of the game is stealth. Yeah, we are talking about a Gravity game. The game pretends to be a step up from Gravity 1. It pretends to be like Gravity 1, but bigger and betterer. But it's not any of those things. For an unexperienced gamer girl, it can be sort of impressive, but in reality, Gravity 2 is so mediocre, there is almost nothing to talk about other than to bitch about how boring it is. And how it looks desaturated, washed out, and very blurry due to bloom on top of having very strong geometry and camera motion blur. It's like playing a game through 25 Instagram filters activated at the same time. And yes, in case you're wondering, motion blur makes the game borderline unplayable. I could bitch about how there is no level design to most of the world. 75% of it is just boxes, in other words. Buildings floating in the air, and that's it, that's all. I could bitch about how there isn't a single good side quest outside of a few not completely terrible ones back in Hexville, the part of the game that I basically don't count, and how there is literally no character progression, the only thing that could have saved the game, really. You basically start with all the powers, because, you know, direct continuation from 1. But I don't want to talk about that in length, and I already explained why. Right? I don't want to. I don't like talking about games that are bad and boring. Here, I just said it. You know, I just mentioned all the things that are bad, which is almost everything about Gravity 2, and that's it. I'm done. I don't want to make a whole video analyzing the terribleness of the game nobody cares about, first of all, and because of how mediocre and irrelevant it is. And second of all, I'm not interested in talking about a video game I don't like. I'm not a YouTube essayer. My life may be shit, but I at least have one. And for the second part of the game, they literally just copied and pasted Gravity 1, complete with music and everything. Only now, 2 years after the remaster, you can play it blurry, desaturated, and washed out, and in 30 FPS instead of 60. Brilliant. How the fuck am I supposed to talk about a game that does that? It's a goddamn joke. That being said, Gravity 1 is so good I almost immediately stopped being annoyed with all the shortcomings of the Gravity 2's engine and loved every second of re-exploring Hexville. But this game doesn't get any credit for that. Gravity 1 does. Gravity 2, no. It just shows why the original game worked so well, even on the Vita running sub 30, because that's how 2 runs on PS4 Pro. And it also clearly demonstrates, by essentially providing you a one-to-one comparison, why the first part of Gravity 2 was so unbearable. Yes, you weren't crazy after all, it was just bad. So, one half of the game is a bad Gravity game. The other half is literally just Gravity 1, only significantly worse. And while it's the best part of the game, I can give the devs any points for simply halfway through development inserting a pre-existing good game into the shitty one they were working on at the time. Probably after Sony telling them that the game needs to be at least twice as long, you know, or something like that. So, unlike Gravity 1, I don't think 2 can be compared to anything, really. While it's obviously not as soulless as Assassin's Creed games, there is basically nothing to talk about unless I make a very negative, literally shitting on the game review. And as I stated previously, I don't got time to write, record, and edit videos about games I don't like. The only thing you can do with a boring game that's worse than play it is just analyze it to death, you know? No, thank you. I luckily can still think of better things to do with my very limited energy. And listen, I'm not saying Marvel's Spider-Man destroys Gravity 2, in case you're a fan of Gravity 2, which, honestly, dude, yeah, in case somehow you love Gravity 2 more than Marvel's Spider-Man, I'm not a fan of that game either. I cannot even think Spider-Man without cringing. And I don't give a fuck about anything even remotely related to Marvel or video games where, the point is to fly between gray boxes with non-transparent windows inserted into them. In terms of level design, tech, ways of getting around in general, and even like use of dimensions, something that Spider-Man has pretty much none of. I mean, well, Batman games probably inferior to Spider-Man, you know, in that area, but the Gravity games are obviously more complex, you know, in terms of in ways of using dimensions than Spider-Man games. So yeah, that and all of my previous points about level design, tech, just ways of getting around. Yeah, obviously Gravity Days 2 is infinitely deeper. However, almost all of its depth and complexity is completely negated by just the 30 FPS, low FOV, and blurry, washed out post-processing alone. The game is literally painful to play, and then the rest of its design just fully drives any resemblance of, like, I don't know, value, you know, of this work of art, of this video game, you know, plaything for children. It just drives its value into the ground. It's not a great product. At the end of the day, what is Marvel's Spider-Man? Oh, I don't know, it's merely the first somewhat bearable Spider-Man game in 15 years? What is Gravity Days 2? It's just a really worse Gravity Days 1. Technically speaking, it's a deeper game than Marcel's Speeder Mail, but in reality it is so unbearably boring and painful I don't even know how to compare it to anything else. If you want, I can give you my thoughts on Speeder Mail versus Gravity 1. You ready? This is from the beginning of the script I started writing and abandoned when actually played Gravity 2. Okay, so since really forever ago, the best superhero sandbox game has been Gravity Days. A lot of you didn't play it, so for you, the best one is probably something like Infamous, Prototype, or Speeder Mail, to which I say, bitch, please. A superhero sandbox is all about movement and use of space, and in that realm, nothing beats Gravity Days, especially the PlayStation 4 remaster running at silky smooth 60 FPS. Comparing other superhero traversal games to Gravity is like arguing God of War 4 versus God Hand. Also, Gravity has a way better visual style and music. I honestly don't even know what the comparison would strike at. The story? What? Prototype and Infamous versus Gravity 1? Again, please. Well, unless we are talking Batman games, but those aren't really open-world sandboxes, and purely traversal mechanics-wise, Batman is nothing compared to Gravity Days. It's just a completely different type of game. Not to mention the Batman's combat system, which is not only the worst of all time, but it also turned out to be contagious and all but ruined a few otherwise perfect games. Also, the story of Gravity 1 is actually pretty damn strong. So the new Spider-Man game, right? The 2018 one on PlayStation 4. On the surface level, I was not interested. New York looks boring, way too photorealistic and gray. Couldn't have been at least some kind of Neo-New York or something? Please, save me from this mediocrity, somebody. I don't care about the story and the characters and the universe of Marvel, whatever, something universe. And I have no patience for another incarnation of the Batman combat system. Okay, end of the script. That's actually where I stopped. Well, let me finish the sentence now, I guess. No patience for another Batman combat system, but what do you know? There can be no competition between Speeder Mail and Gravity 2. No. Speeder Mail takes the cake. Gravity 1 is the best superhero sandbox game ever released. I will fight you on that. No matter if we are talking the original or the remaster, feel free to put Speeder Mail on the second place if you love it so much. I don't care. Gravity 2, though, I wouldn't even put it like third. Wouldn't put it anywhere. It is so boring I don't even know if my mind categorizes it as, you know, like as playing a video game. I think my brain registers playing Gravity 2 as rewatching the same 20-minute long reactionary political YouTube rant on replay for however long the Gravity 2 play session is. Oh, and yeah, by the way, it's definitely not Burnout, okay? Because guess what I started and completed right after dropping Gravity 2? Yep, Gravity 1. And it was insanely good. Gravity 2 compared to 1 is borderline worse than doing literally anything else reasonable, including nothing. Now the channel stuff. It's done, it's over. I'll explain why in a minute. Some people have subscribed. My beautiful peeps, thank you so very much, but this channel is dead. There might be something music related at some point, but it'll be very rare, very occasional, and in fact, probably never. I started doing these videos because I bought a PlayStation 4 Pro, LOL. Yeah, very pro, so much pro. I did it out of having nothing else to do with my life. And the choice towards the console was made out of being too broke to afford a gaming PC worth investing into. Have you seen the prices for the parts these days? So along with it, I got a capture card to try streaming again, you know? Like my super initial plan was to try streaming at first from the console directly, because, you know, a fair bit of fairly successful people actually do that, so like why not? Maybe I can make it work. I managed to make it work reasonably well, but the lack of control was driving me insane, so I quickly got a capture card. But since streaming is purely a simp territory these days, obviously no one is or was watching me anymore, so I decided to make a few YouTube videos just to justify the purchase of the card and the console at least a little bit. Well, it turned out I cannot even get half the games I planned to cover here or on Twitch or anywhere. I cannot import them from Japan because international shipping is on coof vacation, despite the fact there are no like quarantines or states of emergency anywhere. And the games I can buy here are in English only, which, if you know anything about me by now, you know I'm not interested. So this whole like venture into European console gaming was just a giant waste of time. Of course, I play an odd, like, mediocre but still somewhat enjoyable game, you know, here and there. Prey would be a good example, or Homefront, or even the Ubisoft's Genshin clone, of a clone essentially, right? Because Genshin itself Genshin is great, by the way. But I'm definitely not interested in talking about games like that. What is there to say? It's an okay game to play while listening to a podcast. There is effectively no story. The end. P.S. Graphics are okay. For streaming purposes, a lot of it would be tolerable. But for personal entertainment, thank you, I'm good. If I absolutely have to play something for myself, there's still my DS and 3DS and PSP and the Vita backlog, which is scary huge, by the way. I bought so many great games when I was living in Japan. I, no joke, will probably never play through them all. And if we are talking just to make a YouTube video, no, sorry, I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not monetized in any way as a reviewer. I'm not playing a shitty game or write a review for it just to make a video no one's gonna watch anyway. I mean, feel free to hire me if you like my views on what video games should strive to be, but as a hobby, bitching about latest video games on YouTube wouldn't be my first choice. I wanted to recommend and talk about good video games. Writing and editing videos in and of itself is not my hobby. I'm sorry for deceiving you if I did, but the videos I've posted here, I did just to see if I can promote my return to Twitch a little bit. And to make at least some kind of lasting, I suppose, use out of the dozens of hours I wasted streaming for 0 viewers. Just like I did with my shitty stream VODs on this channel, I'll be delisting all non-music related videos, including this one, in like a week or two. But you can still find like all of them, including this video, via the channel's playlists. I do it because I don't want anyone to accidentally subscribe thinking that's the content I'm making, because I'm not. So I'm essentially archiving the whole thing to keep the channel, well, cleaner, I guess. Otherwise, it looks really weird to have like a music channel at first and then some random stream VODs, and then some more music, and then some edited gaming videos, like rants, essays almost. Oh no. It looks like a dumpster. I don't like it. Making a separate channel would be ideal, I think, but... Well, would be ideal if I kept doing this thing, but since I'm not producing any more content, I think I might as well archive it here. What do you think? Oh, you don't care? Well, that's the correct answer. Neither am I. Fuck gaming content. As for my happened years ago but never addressed because I was in denial, departure from music. Initially, I wanted to make a separate short video finally addressing my retirement from music because I felt and still feel like there's some, I don't know, maybe not confusion as to what has happened to my music activities like since Hit Signature came out. But like, I just don't know, like, I always felt like there should have been some kind of like public statement, you know, from me. I actually recorded that one, the video addressing all that, months ago, even before the first Cyberpunk video. And it's been just sitting on my hard drive, encoded and completely ready to go, but I decided not to upload it. Maybe later, I thought, maybe in between some of the planned videos, or at least a bit after the Cyberpunk ones. I didn't want my music retirement video to be the last one on my channel for anything longer than like maybe a day or two. So I needed to plan its release around other videos. So I started working on those and quickly realized that, oh no, none of those videos are coming anytime soon, and there will be nothing following them, in fact, like never, because, yeah, Nyakuza 7 broke me. Well, not really, but in a way, yeah. So in the end, when I quote-unquote came up with the quote-unquote idea for this video, I decided, okay, I'll just, you know, hide my like music retirement addressing in this video, essentially. And that's what I'm doing now. That's what I did, I think. I'll just leave you with that video I made months ago. It explains everything, including my future plans. I'll probably cut it short because like the last 20% of it was just me plugging my unused music library and myself as a composer/producer. It doesn't make sense to have it here. It needs to be in a standalone video for sure, which I might do eventually, I don't know. Sorry for the betrayal if you subscribed for the gaming stuff. Definitely don't bother following my Twitch channel. For music, if I release something not terrible, I'll probably announce it over on Twitter. You can follow me there and just check my page once a year or two. I never tweet, so I'm not gonna take up space in your feed, I don't think. I do leave likes though, and that will be in your feed, I think, so maybe don't follow me after all. In addition to Bandcamp, non-terrible music content will probably also be uploaded to YouTube. Probably. Also, if for some reason you want to contact me, Twitter would probably be the best place, or you can shoot me an email through my website, or even a whisper on Twitch. For stuff that is terrible, usually I don't promote it or upload to YouTube. It just goes straight to Bandcamp for archiving purposes, and that's where it stays. That's where the journey ends. So if you like garbage demos that never get properly produced, obviously, they're just immediately abandoned, my Bandcamp page can occasionally deliver. Thank you for listening. Thank you so very much for your attention to my shenanigans. This is the end though. It was fun talking about video games again, but I'm not a YouTuber and there's no place on Twitch for me anymore, so I just cannot keep wasting time on that. I apologize if I misled you. It's quite possible you'll never hear about me again. Much love. Have a good dozen, eh? Hey, this is a short PSA I should have done months, if not years ago, as sort of an epilogue to my music shenanigans. Before and during the period of time when I was working as a composer/producer, music was my whole life. I was fully invested into writing and producing the highest quality, most interesting pieces of music I could, without really leaving any part of me available for other things in life. Establishing better friendships and relationships, seeking opportunities to take your career elsewhere, considering opportunities maybe to get a better education. I neglected all of those with a sole purpose, just making time for music. Never to play even more video games or do drugs or whatever. No, I never had a goal like that, to basically just sit and do nothing as much as possible. No, that's not me. At least it wasn't me. Regardless of whether I've always succeeded at music, and if all of that was even worth it, the answer to both is no, by the way. I was always honestly trying my best, trying to create something good. Needless to say, I used to write music all the time, regardless of being paid for it or not, which, by the way, comparatively speaking, really didn't happen all that often, especially if you consider all the piles of garbage I never even bothered to publish. Really, only a small fraction of my work was ever monetized. I'm hardly one of the lucky ones that made it. Well, as a result of my obsession, really, I ended up with a few dozen relatively okay-ishly done tracks that were never really heard by anyone. Technically, yes, I did quote-unquote publish them on Bandcamp, but it went all but completely unnoticed, trust me. There are literally less than 20 people that are in the know that I've done things other than Heat Signature. By the way, if you're one of them, thank you. You're awesome. What I'm trying to say here, that music is for sale. If you're looking for something, be it purely instrumental, or even if you're an artist looking for a songwriter, maybe give my page a try. There is some electronic stuff, some metal, even some pop, with and without vocals, all of that. Whether you might want a complete buyout or to just license a track for use in your work, I am good with either. I'll be a ghostwriter if you want, whatever makes something good to come out of all that music, really. It goes without saying, but if you want to request any kind of change, expansion, or maybe even something completely new, you shall have it, no problem at all. I can still write things, I even do sometimes. There are probably some links to specific playlists in the description of the video, but really everything in my Bandcamp that isn't Inkeep or Heat Signature is not licensed by anyone but me, borderline never heard by anyone, and is available for purchase. That's all. Nothing else to add, really. End of the video. Applause. Thank you for your attention, and goodbye. Drink nutrients, eat water, avoid peril, and have a good one.